Guys, this is Jen Curtis, postpartum fitness specialist based in Tel Aviv, and I want to talk to you today about a couple of cues for the core from the fitness industry that I really disagree with, and I want to share with you why. I think they're very damaging and dangerous to our core / pelvic health. And there is a lot of research and science to back this up, and lots of people are talking about this now, not just in the fitness industry, but also in the women's health industry and in the pelvic health industry. And I think this message needs to be spread a little bit further. So I'm sure a lot of people are going to really disagree with this one, so it's going to be interesting what kind of backlash I get. But anyway, forgetting that, I'm just going to go for it and share with you what I found out and what I believe to be true. So the first cue that I dislike, to put it mildly, is navel to spine. Suck your belly in, pull your belly button to your spine, suck your belly in, squeeze your belly, like all of those kind of like things. So first of all, we don't really have a common vernacular, exactly what that means. It can be quite confusing. What the trainer means versus what the trainee understands it to mean can be very, very different. But also, it's just not the idea is that if you suck your belly in, it's going to stabilize your spine. But just there's very different mechanisms of sucking your belly in, and if we just go for the kind of, I'll demonstrate. If we just go for the kind of like just suck the belly in, navel to spine, you see how it sticks my rib cage out and it just hollows the belly in. That doesn't stabilize shit. It doesn't do anything to stabilize the spine and to create any extra kind of like support for that area. It's not using the muscles in a very in a very organic way, in the way that they were meant to be used. And the other thing that it does is it puts a lot of pressure on parts of our core that don't need to have pressure put on them. Like I said, sometimes it can really stick our rib cage out, and I see a lot of mums after having a baby whose rib cage is really flared, and we have to work really hard at bringing that in. And if the rib cage is flared, then the diaphragm is also very flat. Julie Wiebe talks about the balloon model of the core. So when we think of the core, we think of it as all really separate kind of parts. If we think of it at all, people don't usually think of it of anything other than just the rectus abdominis, the six-pack muscles. So I want to show you Julie Wiebe's model of the core, which is, if we take a balloon, it's like the diaphragm sits at the top of our rib cage, and then the pelvic floor at the bottom, sitting at the bottom of our pelvis. I don't know what this would be, let's just ignore that, pretend that's not there. And then we have, like, let's say this is our 6-pack, it's actually an 8-pack. Going down the middle, this is the linea alba, which is the white line, which is the connective tissue that joins it together, which is usually what splits or causes the separation. We won't go into that. Then you've got your spine at the back, and then we've got like all of this musculature around. We won't go into too much detail with that. We've got a big belt of muscle coming around and grabbing and joining in here, coming around the back and joining in here. So it's all a cylindrical shaped object. It's actually more like a Coke can kind of shape, but we're going to look at it as a balloon. And if I suck my belly in, so if I show you on this model what happens when I suck my belly in, do you see what happens to diaphragm and to the pelvic floor. So we already talked about how that was really dramatic. Like, look at that. But so we've already discussed how that can kind of push the rib cages up and out and then flatten the diaphragm. But it also creates a lot of pressure pushing, which is really nicely demonstrated by my balloon here, that pops out on the pelvic floor. And it's really thought now that cue of sucking your navel to your spine is actually a big contributing factor to pelvic floor issues, and it's really quite unhelpful. I think a more helpful cue would be, oh look, I've rubbed all of this off. I think a more helpful cue would be if we're going to use a cue at all, and people may disagree with this. This isn't necessarily science, but this is just what I see in my practice. I ask people to think of their core like a corset, and I ask them to engage their core as though they're kind of like pulling on the strings of the corset and trying to pull all of this in together to stabilize the spine. And what that usually does is you usually see this kind of like, you usually see the core muscles actually kind of coming together and gathering in more. And I think that's a far more helpful kind of model and demonstration than just kind of suck your belly in and then like create all of this tons of pressure up and down, which I don't think is helpful. And I had another, the other cue that I think is really unhelpful is to press your lower back into the floor. So this is when you're lying on your back doing some kind of crunch usually. You're usually asked by the instructor to push your lower back into the floor. I think that's really unhelpful because if I demonstrate in a kind of, well, I can't do it standing, I'm going to do it like kneeling. My pelvis is here and my rib cage is here, and I want my pelvis and my rib cage in alignment. That means I want them parallel to each other, okay, all the time. That's kind of ideal alignment. If I'm on the floor, I still want to be in that same alignment, like with the rib cage and the pelvic floor or the pelvis parallel to each other. If I tuck my if I stick my lower back into the floor, I have to tuck my pelvis to do that, okay? Which is the equivalent of if I come back into my standing/kneeling position, is the equivalent of that. I've got this, like everything's nicely aligned, and then if I tuck my pelvis under, suddenly like they're not aligned anymore, they're out of alignment. And I think this is also really unhelpful. One of the most common things that I see in postpartum women is this kind of tucked bum syndrome, where the pelvis is tucked, their bum's gone flat and it's not working properly anymore. And it's the muscles just aren't really activating. But if you also think about it, if I tuck my pelvis, my hamstrings are going to get really tight, my hip flexors are going to get really tight, my lower back is going to flatten, which we don't want. We don't want a flat lower back. We're supposed to have a curve in our lower spine, and it also it actually just takes everything out of alignment and out of and it really affects the pelvic floor. Has to respond. I don't want to go into too much detail, but the pelvic floor has to respond to like the diaphragm, and if it's tilted back and in the wrong posture, it can't respond to this intra-abdominal pressure in the same way. So I'm going to wrap up here, but they're two cues I find really unhelpful. We don't want to press instead of pressing our lower back into the floor, we want to keep the correct alignment, and that means having a curve in your lower spine. It means your bum sticking out behind your back, and we don't want to suck our belly in. We want to engage our core in a way that involves all of the teammates of this core. So again, I hope that was helpful. Let me know what you think. this one has the potential to ignite a lot of discussion. So I'd really love to hear what you think, and let me know if you have any questions and any ideas for future posts, and I'll post them and I'll explain about it. Great, thanks, bye.